as said, we're here with only one goal: to help you drive climate action in your companies. And we see that commitment is there, but just as anyone who ever tried to quit smoking or slim down a few pounds know that commitment is just not enough, even if you know what should be done and what works. But we're here to support you. You're not alone, so let's do that together. Talking to hundreds of members of our community, we discovered that many of you face exactly the same challenges and have exactly the same questions. So this inspired us to put together a practical guide to help you navigate in it. And this guide is already in your email box in the reminder that you received before the event. Still, we don't think that PDF can change the world. So the Climate Action Spotlight project consists of two parts. One part is the guide, answering the questions like what exactly you can do, what solutions are available, and yeah, what impact it can have, and so on. And another part of the project is mastermind groups, which answer the question, how can you personally do this in your company? How can you overcome the challenges that you face month by month? And additionally, please meet our guests for today. These are real experts working in the field for so many years. And first, I will introduce you the content of the guide shortly. Then we will dive into the content of the guide a little bit. And then I will explain how mastermind groups will work. And then we have a discussion session where we will also define our next steps. So I hope you're ready to meet the guide. First thing you need to know that it is not a theoretical concept. It is based 100% on real cases, on what other companies are doing already. So it means that you can do the same. We talked to hundreds of our members. We talked to climate heroes, meaning brands who are strongly committed on sustainability. We also have done some research on latest scientific papers, and we also checked clean tech solutions available on the market. This is still far from being an ultimate guide, but still we found so many ideas that we needed some scientific framework to structure it and to prioritize solutions and to help you navigate through it. And so far, the best fit was a brand new framework developed by French organization Carbon 4. It is called Framework for Collective Climate Neutrality. And there are two things that we especially like about it. So we built our framework based on, inspired by this one. So two things that we like the most. One thing is that it inspires you to not only reduce your own emissions, but also own your sphere of influence, so that you should reduce emissions in your scope of partners and clients and whoever you can reach. And also the second one is that we need to shift our mindset from compensation, meaning almost canceling emissions, to supporting carbon removal solutions. And this means that you can only contribute to global climate neutrality, but technically no one can be climate neutral on their own. So here on this slide, I will show you 13 projects that we structured in the guide. First, we tried to limit the scope of each project so that it should be possible to have first results within the next 12 months already. So these are not, too ambitious, not too small. These are just like projects that we recommend, like right size. And then, of course, quite big reduction potential still lays in the product optimization, the facilities optimization. This we could not cover in this guide because it should be universal for companies working in with different products, with different business models, but there are still quite a lot of things that every e-commerce company can do. And when working on your sustainability strategy, please try to plan at least one of actions in each of these pillars that we suggest. First project is about measuring your footprint, including scope 3. It is always a challenge, we know, especially if you have a wide product line. But in this case, we suggest you starting mapping with just one product segment or one supplier and then scale it up gradually. The next two projects are about packaging. In one, we give you an overview of solutions that help you to make packaging more compact, ship less air, and also we recommend to consider some alternative materials for packaging and for filling in materials. And another one is pilot reusable packaging, which is packaging that can be used multiple times, but it can be returned from customers to you or from you to your suppliers. Then the fourth one is a little bit of innovation, where we explain how additional climate-related nudges can help you to reduce your returns that I'm sure you're working on anyway. We will talk about it later in detail. The next two projects are about logistics. The first one, we suggest ways to optimize your truck and container loading and mind what fuel is used and so on. And in the sixth project, we highlight changes that you can make in last delivery. So, for example, having more local fulfillment centers, asking your courier to partner for more bike delivery and cargo bikes and so on. Then, in the sphere of influence, we suggest you to start asking your suppliers about their sustainability status and tracking this information in your product management system. This also helps you to calculate your scope 3 footprint. So as you can see, some projects, they related one and support one another. The next large leverage you have is influencing your customers. In the project 8, we suggest you to highlight information about sustainability criteria of the product on your product pages. And in the project 9, we suggest you to include sustainability criteria in your search bar. Thus making more responsible choices available for your customers. But apart from that, there's even more what you can do. For example, you can employ reverse logistics to facilitate circularity, inviting your customers to send you back items that can be reused or recycled. Not related to product you sell, you can also invite your customers to take climate action in a wider range, for example, switch to green energy or green banking and so on. And in the last pillar, we focus on financing carbon capturing solutions. Here you can invite your customers to take part and allow them to donate at the checkout. You can also adopt an internal carbon tax, which can take different forms, but the main idea is always that you need to add a monetary value to emissions and take it into account when you make any business decisions. So you already have this guide in your email, and we will also send you a detailed follow-up on Monday. So please take a minute to read a bit into detail the projects that sound most interesting for you. But just to give you a hint of what you can expect there. First, we structured environmental impacts and commercial benefits, as we believe that they should enable one another. So in the first, in impact area, you can find facts and figures about how exactly this action influences the climate. In the second section is quite unique, I think, because there we have statistically proven facts how your business can benefit from it. So please use this in negotiations with your most skeptical colleagues. This is followed by specific examples and case studies showing how other companies have implemented that already and what results that brought. But most importantly, for each project, you can find very specific practical hints with plenty of useful tools, services, templates, everything that project manager could need working through the project. But even more to this, we realize that this information should be constantly updated and you need to work with it day to day. So all of these actions are available in the members area. You should just log in the personal area. If you don't have your personal account, please reach out to us and we will create it. So in the tool that we have for our members, we have this dashboard of actions that you could take, and you can filter e-commerce actions and find there exactly the same information, but you can also work with it actively. For example, you can see which companies are doing this already, and you can also see the implementation steps as a checklist, and this can help you to track the dynamic, how you work on it. You can also plan actions, thus using it when you work on your sustainability strategy. So, and now I'm proud and humbled to pass the word to our guests, real change makers from e-commerce sector, people and organizations who have very much been in your shoes, pushing to implement ambitious reduction measures in their companies. And they're here to share their learnings, and please also take the short presentations as a brief teaser of what you could expect from our mastermind groups. Please meet first Emma Crani from Patagonia.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to speak to you, and it's quite impressive how many people tuned in for this event, although I'm quite happy we're digital because it would be much more intimidating if we were all in the same room. Yeah, so I'm Emma. I work for Patagonia Europe. I'm currently calling you from the beautiful French Alps, although I'm normally based in our European headquarters in Amsterdam. My role is to coordinate our circularity initiatives, what we call our warm wear program in Europe, which is everything we do to keep our gear in use for longer and out of the landfill, including repair, e-commerce, recycling, and upcycling. Maybe Anna, you can move on to the next slide. Or maybe the next one actually, and then you can come back to this one. Yeah, I just wanted to start with this one. At Patagonia, our mission statement is we're in business to save our home planet. It was changed overnight by our founder, Yvan Chouinard, a few years ago. And at the time, it was a real wake-up call for everyone in the company, because before the mission statement of the company was much longer. And now with this mission statement, there was no place to hide anymore. And another fun fact that I learned when I joined the company is at Patagonia, we don't use the word sustainability. Instead, we talk about being a responsible company, because we recognize that everything we do still has a negative impact on the planet. And the best thing we do is to minimize it. The best thing we can do actually is to try and minimize it, which is why we impose an earth tax on ourselves under the form of a giving program called 1% for the planet. And through this, we've given about $110 million to date to over 1,000 NGOs over the world. So we think there is no room for climate deniers today, which is why as a responsible business, we must do everything we can to affect change. Maybe you can go back to actually the previous slide, that's actually maybe my fault. I didn't put them in order. So one thing we do is trying to find all the ways possible to reduce and eliminate our carbon footprint. And we've set a goal to be net zero in greenhouse gases emissions by 2025, including the greenhouse gases emissions from our supply chain. And I'm insisting on this because our supply chain accounts for most of our greenhouse gases emission, which means 97%. So through this commitment, we will reduce, capture, or otherwise mitigate all the carbon emissions we create, including the emissions from the factories that create the textiles and the finished clothing. We actually already use only renewable energy for our stores, for our regional and global offices, and we plan to influence the move to renewable energy for our factories as well. And one other thing which is important for textile, with our other textile industry people in the room, is we're thinking a lot about how to use more recycled materials in our products, because creating virgin synthetic fibers is actually, accounts actually for 80%, even more, I think 86% of the carbon emissions related to our supply chain. So that's pretty significant. And some other things that we need to do as a business is focus on the areas where we think we can have the biggest impact, because we're determining to, with the size of our business growing, we're determined to influence and try and find collective solutions. So things that we are working on is strengthening our ActionWorks network, which I will explain more in details in a few minutes. We've also worked on developing an environmental profit and loss business strategy, so that we make sure that we give more than we take. And with this tool, we measure the impact of the environmental impact of each of our products. Then we convert these impacts into financial terms, and then we subtract these financial terms from the profit that the product produces. And finally, and this is what I work on more specifically is we're committed to embedding each element of OneWare into our business more deeply. And with OneWare, we hope to help address the apparel industry's waste problem by empowering our consumers to reduce consumption with repair, rental, and re-commerce. So maybe you can move on to the next two slides probably. Yeah, so now I want to dive a bit deeper into two areas that I found most relevant maybe. The first one is employing reverse logistics to facilitate circularity. So within Patagonia, we're thinking a lot about how to extend the life of our products because creating a circular economy is the most important way we can reduce waste at a global level and reduce our collective environmental footprint. You can move on to the next slide. As our founder once said, the best jacket for our planet is the one that already exists, that you already own. So since the start of the company in the 1970s, repairing clothing and repairing gear and play has been part of the core business, but we are more and more determined to growing this part of the business, although I have to say it is much more advanced in the US than it is in Europe. So for example, in the US, we already have a platform on which we sell secondhand Patagonia products. And this online platform, this re-commerce business has grown 40% in 2020. We've sold about 100,000 units or garments, sorry. So we know there's a potential to grow it. There's a demand out there. Just to come back to the core topic that I was addressing, for the reverse logistics, we're doing partly ourselves, but we're also working with a California-based startup called Trove that we've invested in with our corporate venture capital fund, Tinted Ventures. So what we do is we take used products back from our customers, and in exchange we give them a merchandise credit. Then when the products arrive in our facility in Reno, Nevada, we sort them, wash them, clean and repair them if needed, and then we ship these products to Trove, who helps us with the photography, warehousing, IT maintenance of the online platform, shipping, and also customer service. So as I said, in Europe, we're much smaller. We're newer on the market. There are less Patagonia products in circulation, which means people are probably less likely also to want to give them back. So we decided to start small and to go retail first. So in May 2021, a few months ago, we opened our first in-store secondhand corner in our store in Berlin. And we don't have a trade-in program yet in Europe, to be completely honest. So the products we are reselling are products that we got from our customers and that are already sitting in our warehouse. And we're doing the refurbishment process ourselves. We're not outsourcing it to another company. So we know there's an opportunity for it to grow. Let's grow circularity in the textile. Like for example, in the past 3 years, the secondhand clothing grew 20 times faster than the traditional or the overall apparel industry. So we're determining to growing this even more. And just to mention this, we're doing this not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because it is business critical. If you think about it, the Earth's resources are not limitless. So to become more resilient as a business, at some point we realized we can no longer rely only on producing new clothes. And the way we see it, when we repair, when we rent, or when we upcycle or recycle, we reduce the need for new clothes, which means we reduce the resources needed to produce these new clothes in terms of virgin materials, in terms of CO2, in terms of energy, and in terms of water. So we're also working on calculating the impact mitigation reduction enabled by these programs. But this is work in progress. And also something important I think to mention is OneWare enables us to deepen the relationship with our customers because we're selling at a lower price point, and because it's secondhand products, it enables us to bring a broader range of values aligned customers into our community. So for example, our data shows that the average OneWare customer is 10 years younger than the average Patagonia customer. So bringing reaching younger customers is also a big part of this business strategy or this partnership. I mean, we call it a partnership between our customers and us because it's not a service that we provide for free. It's a real strategy if we want it to be viable on the long term. So second thing I wanted to address, this is what you see on the screen right now, is how to motivate your customers to take climate action. So I think the most relevant thing to mention is Patagonia Action Works, which we launched in the US in 2018 because we recognized the power and the potential of connecting our customers, our employees, with our environmental activism community, which was out there, all the NGOs that we were supporting through the 1% for the Planet program. So with this platform, we're facilitating skill-based volunteering. We're enabling people to sign petitions, to attend events, to also donate to our NGOs personally. So we launched the platform in Europe in 2019. So now in Europe, we have more than 100 environmental NGOs onboarded on the platform, which work in areas as diverse as biodiversity, for example, climate, communities, land protection, water resource protection. So it's pretty broad. Now you may be wondering why are we doing this? Why is activism good for business? So we a bit similar to Wonger, we also realized that with ActionWorks, we had the potential to expand our reach and to connect with communities we've never reached before. So, for example, 65% of the users on this platform are not Patagonia customers. They're new to the Patagonia community, which is pretty interesting. Also, we realized that more and more companies that don't contribute to society's well-being and support protecting the environment face more brand risk. They're facing more pressure from their communities and from their employees, so even internally. Even CEOs who stay in the gray area and don't take positions on the environmental issues, they're being more questioned. And we've seen throughout Patagonia's history that our strong commitment to environmental advocacy and activism has connected us to, has strengthened the bond with our community and with our employees as well. So it's not only good for business, it also helps us attract talents. So younger people, also like leaders in the environmental space, they want to put their skills to use. And we're also attracting younger customers, which is, to be honest, something that all retailers want, because you're securing a relationship and then, sustaining it throughout the years. And we're also attracting more people to stores, because people now, they no longer only come to shop, but they'll also come to attend events or conferences that we organize with our NGOs. And these groups are like, just to get to know better these groups. So what I wanted also to say to close this presentation is it may seem easy for us. And in a sense, maybe it's slightly easier because we're still a privately owned company, so we are a bit more independent in the decisions we make. However, I personally face challenges in my everyday job, like specifically on the circularity topic, which I'm working on. It is still difficult to get people on board, to take time from them on top of their daily jobs, because I would love if everyone in the company had targets related to our circularity performance in the job description. We're not there yet. So it means like I have to ask, time and efforts from people on top of what they're already doing, which is sometimes difficult. So at first, when I started in the role, I got frustrated because I couldn't get people's immediate commitment to the projects I wanted to lead. But over time, I took another approach and focused a bit more on educating people internally about why this is important and which baby steps we can take to put us on the right track and to just get the ball rolling. So at first it was a lot about listening and understanding people's point of view, where they came from, what they also have on their plate, and reaching alignment from the important stakeholders internally, and then we could start moving. So we're actually, to be completely transparent with you, moving a bit more slowly than I would have hoped. And you can move on to the last slide, I think, also an element of our culture is, as long as you're doing something, it's still good. Like, we're fighting in action. So as long as you're doing something, even if it feels small at the moment, it's getting you started and putting you on the right track.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. Just want to say, unfortunately, I can't stay until the end of the event, but if you want to reach out to me afterwards or just yeah, feel free to do so on LinkedIn or by email. I'm always happy to connect and help.
Thank you, Emma, very much. This is absolutely fantastic what you're doing. And thank you very much for sharing the personal perspective, how it feels inside of the team to support this kind of projects. And now over to Jenny Van Son from bol.com. Please, Jenny.
I'm having some difficulty seeing the screen. I can't see anything anymore, so I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
But I don't see the slides anymore. But it might be my internet connection.
Is it better now?
No, would it help if I just log out and you let me back in the room?
Yeah, sure, you can do that.
See if that's it? Yeah, I'll just try that, sorry.
But others can see the screen, right? Yeah, good.
That's better, perfect. Sorry about that. Can you hear me right now or not? Yeah, okay, cool, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Jenny Van Son. I am a project manager in sustainability at bol.com, and I'd like to tell you a bit more how we're working towards climate neutral shopping. But first, I'll give you a short introduction on bol.com for those who don't know us. We started about 25 years ago as an online bookstore, but since have developed into an e-commerce platform. And as a platform, we serve the majority of the Netherlands and Belgium, as we have about 13 million customers, and we are part of the worldwide company called Ahold Delhaize. On our platform, we sell over 30 million products in about 10,000 product groups, but we don't do this all by ourselves. We work together with, I think you have old slides, it should be 47,000 local partners and suppliers. And I'm telling you these numbers to show that we are actually in the middle of society, and we feel responsible contributing to a positive change. So that's why back in 2018, we started working on our sustainability mission. And that ambition is that in 2025, shopping at bol.com is climate neutral. So in our case, that means that we'll reduce our footprint to 0 grams CO2 emission per package, but as well as that we will make sustainable shopping easy for our customers. So we believe it's important that as a platform, not to only focus on your direct emissions, but also take into account the impact of the products and the product chain. And even though we don't produce those products ourselves. So that's why we also included this, and we're trying to make sustainable ways of shopping easier for our customers. On this slide, you'll find a quick overview of the topics we are currently focusing on regarding the approach shared in the guide. And on the next few slides, I'll go into detail on these. So first up, looking at reducing our CO2 emissions. If we look at our footprint from 2018, we see that 3 topics mostly make up our footprint. So that's delivery, energy use, and packaging. And I'll go through each one of these, starting with energy. So on the next slide, you'll see some initiatives we taken to reduce our emissions on energy. And the biggest impact we've had in reducing our emissions was by switching to a fully 100% local green energy for all of our locations. So warehouses, data centers, all of our offices. And this had an enormous impact on our emissions, as we were able to reduce our emissions per package by about 20% last year. So this has been a big step for us. Then looking at packaging, what we're seeing here, as you can imagine, with an assortment of over 30 million products in 10,000 product groups, it's quite tough for us to have the right packaging in place. So what we're focusing on is reducing the amount of packaging we use per item. Well, the biggest impact we can have in reducing the amount of packaging is, of course, sending without any bol.com packaging. So what we're doing is sitting together with suppliers and partners to identify those products that don't need an extra bol.com box. And currently we're selling millions of shipments without any packaging, and this is an ongoing optimization, and we're looking to expand on this. For items that cannot be sent without any bol.com packaging, we try to reduce the amount of packaging materials we use. So for example, by investing in packaging machines. Currently we have a multi-item packaging machines which can package multiple random items of varying sizes together in a very tight package. And that means that the packages will be smaller, and thus in the end we will transport less air. There are a lot of packages that can't go through the machine or on the scale that we operate. So we've also implemented some initiatives on the manual packing process. So for example, a new packaging line, using less material, so a thinner carton, and lots of varying sizes to be sure that a lot of items have the smallest available box when we package them. So what has helped us in this, just go back a little bit, what has helped us in this and really going forward with packaging is setting very ambitious targets with a deadline not 20 years away, but really in the upcoming years, even if you don't know how to get there. And to start today, implement the targets in the departments which are relevant, put them in the KPIs and really start working on today, and you'll learn along the way and improve further on, but start working today and set really big targets with a very close deadline. So on to the next slide, and that is of course delivery. And we are working together with our logistics partners to reduce the emissions of delivery. For example, as was already mentioned, by increasing the last mile done or delivered by foot or by bicycle. And because we have a very large volume in the Netherlands and Belgium, we are also able to include a sorting center of one of our logistics partners in our own warehouse. So that's our logistics partners don't have to go back and forth between our warehouses and the sorting centers. They can actually do the sorting right there and then deliver it to customers. On top of that, we're talking with logistics partners to expand their electric fleets. These are conversations that are happening right now, and that's really a work in progress as well. And we are quite dependent on what is available in the market. Another focus that we have is providing customers with more insights and enable them to choose more sustainable ways of delivery. So what we're seeing from surveys is that the majority of our customers say they already take into account sustainability while shopping. And that means that we want to give them the choice to act on that. So we have a pilot running at this moment on optimal delivery day. So this means we give customers insights on what is the most sustainable delivery option for their purchase, and then enable them to choose that option. So on to the next slide. So if we look at how we've been doing with these initiatives, we have been able to reduce our emissions per package by 39% compared to our base year. We still have work to do to become climate neutral, but we are definitely in line, and we're set up with a great start. Then lastly, 2 more slides, because part of our ambition is also to help customers make a more sustainable choice. And one of the targets in this is that we want to provide customers with a sustainable alternative in every product group by the end of next year. So we've grown this. As mentioned, we have 10,000 product groups. We started at about 10% 2 years ago, and currently our customers can find a more sustainable choice in 52% of our product groups. And we still have a lot to do to reach that 100% next year, but we're well on our way. So looking at the difficulties in this, onto the next slide. So as mentioned, the majority of our customers, they say they take into account sustainability and they want to during their shopping. So there is a custom demand for information. And what we want to do is make it easy for them to find the more sustainable choices in the assortment. So as many other platforms and web shops also do, we create recognizability for these items by using a general sustainability label. That way it's easy for every customer to identify quickly those more sustainable options, and it doesn't require any extra knowledge on sustainability. Well, besides the label, of course, we also implemented a filter, which provides our customers with more in detail options and focuses on what aspect of sustainability it entails. So, for example, organic or B Corp. So they can actually make a better informed choice. And what we see is providing this extra level of detail in the filtering. It helps improve the conversion rate of these customers using the filter. And to me, it shows that we are providing them with information they're actively looking for. Well, during this process, we have definitely run into difficulties. So first off, what is sustainable? What is sustainable or more sustainable option? Because shopping in its basic is not sustainable. So we sit together with independent expert organizations to define for each product group what is a more sustainable choice. And we set up requirements that use independent verification, so we don't make that call ourselves on what is sustainable. The challenge in this for us is that it entails 10,000 product groups. So for each one of them, we have to create requirements. So this is for us still a work in progress. Another difficulty in the process is once you know what would be a more sustainable option, to actually identify the products on the platform that would match these requirements. So there never used to be an international database of eco-labels where we could just plug in and match it to the product data to check if the claims were being made were actually correct. Luckily, improvements are being made in the market, but we still are not as scalable, and it takes up a lot of time. A lot of people manually checking claims and making sure that we only show the label near projects that are actually a more sustainable option. So this is also a work improvement. We're working on scalability here and making sure people at our company have time focusing on this as well. So that's a challenge. However, despite the difficulties, it is absolutely worth focusing on this as well. What we have been seeing is that by implementing all of this, it has doubled the amount of customers who chose a more sustainable option in a product group, and just a time frame over a few months. So that has been a very good result. That was it for the presentation. I can imagine it was quite a bit of information in a very short time. I hope you found it useful, and thank you for listening.
Absolutely, Jenny. Thank you so much for such a condensed and crisp presentation. That's amazing to see how the commitment, like strong commitment on sustainability, could look like for mono-brand and for multi-brand platform. We could see like different points of view and approaches. That's, I think, really great. And now we can move to service providers that help companies to achieve these goals. And of course, in the field of carbon accounting, we're happy to have so many partners around who work very professionally in this field. And today we welcome Susanne Volkner from Climate Partner to share with us some learnings and insights.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much for inviting us to the presentation today. And it's been very, very educational for me already, and it's been very exciting as well to see how companies are able, with the right insights on, what is my corporate carbon footprint, how can I reduce that, how can I involve my suppliers in order to then help me to provide a more sustainable solution to my customers, and how can I then engage my customers as well. So those are the three topics that I'll be presenting on today. That's what Leaders for Climate Action asked us to focus on today. A lot of topics for 10 minutes, so the topics will be teasered, and of course we're always happy to help you to gain more in-depth information on the topics. So we'll be talking about how to find out where your emission hotspots are as a company, how to do corporate carbon footprint, how to engage in that, what is best practice, and how to then identify potentials, like we've learned from Jenny right now, to see where are my emission hotspots. Next slide, Anna. Thank you. So when you measure your carbon emissions for your company, it is always important to include, especially when we talk about scope 3, which is the focus here, the relevant categories. And for an e-commerce company, what we believe is relevant is, of course, the regular stuff like employee commuting, business travel, operations, etc., packaging for your upstream activities, but very vital, that's what we see from the e-commerce customers that we are working with, is really to include transportation and distribution, because that is when you're not a producing company, but sort of reselling as part of an e-commerce platform, that is where your heaviest emissions are, and that's why it's vital to gain further insights into those by including them into your corporate carbon footprint. Of course, if you're a producing company, it is very important to include as well the capital goods, not the capital goods, the raw materials, etc., that you're sort of purchasing and including. But to get that emission insight, it is important to do that. Of course, if you're doing science-based targets, you would maybe widen that. So it depends as well on the purpose, what you're trying to achieve. But if the purpose is to come to grips with the emissions that you're controlling, logistics is a very important element to include. And of course, it's vital to see as well, how do we then measure the corporate carbon footprint? What is the best practice here? The best practice is really to involve as many stakeholders as possible from your company, from your functions or the various sites. If you're a widely spread organization with a lot of offices and warehouses, for example, and to involve functional stakeholders. So to not have the data collection effort on one pair of shoulders, but to invite these stakeholders to become part of the process, not just for the data collection, but always to have as well upfront a kind of kickoff, which, for example, we as Climate Partner do with the companies we work with. So our customers invite a wider team to define with us the relevant scopes, especially as part of scope 3, that need to be included. They discuss how you can find the data within your company, and then of course experts support all these stakeholders and the various functions, for example, facility management, purchasing, especially with regards to logistics topics, materials, travel, etc., to involve them and to make them part of the effort. And that helps as well, what Emma mentioned earlier, to ensure that more departments and more employees become part of that effort and gain also the awareness, especially when it comes to where is the data, what processes do we maybe need to change to have better data next time round, and also to understand the emission hotspots, which we see here very nicely. This is a dummy version for an e-commerce company, but a very typical one. And you see very quickly that if you include inbound and outbound logistics, especially the outbound logistics for this typical company here, is more than 90% of the overall logistics. And so you see very quickly that this is where you can put the lever, that's where your emission hotspots are, and that's where the biggest reduction potential is as well. Of course, there are other elements too, like we see here. You can still optimize, of course, fleet emissions to reduce those. You can switch to renewable energy, and that's what we learned from Jenny right now, that really helped to reduce the energy used in the fulfillment centers. But the logistics are normally the bulk, and Jenny also had some nice examples with regards to, you know, the picture that you saw for the last mile delivery, for example. It is important to collaborate with those logistics service providers to see how you can lower emissions, to have more effective routing software, for example, and also to see how can you have better product design from the suppliers that you have to reduce packaging. I think there is a nice example from IKEA, just these little tea lights, when they started to stack them and not to have them in a random bag, they could reduce, for example, their logistics emissions for this particular products, I think by something like 20%. And of course, it's important as well to improve customer awareness and the choice of the products, the pictures, the measurements when it comes to clothing, to reduce as well the logistics of products that are being sent back or returned, and not for recycling, but because they're not, it's the wrong size, etc. It's always possible as well to modify travel guidelines, etc., or to subsidize, for example, how your employees travel to work. But the hotspot is and will always be your fulfillment centers and the logistics, in some cases as well, the packaging. How can you then involve your supply chain. So especially when you're not a producing company where maybe the products and raw materials are not part of your control, it is really important to work with your suppliers and find out more about product carbon footprints. You there as well identify the emission hotspots and what you do with regards to product carbon footprint. You work along all the life cycle phases. So if you can encourage your product suppliers, for example, you can choose your 10 best-selling products from your e-commerce or your closest supplier and work with them and say, hey, we would like to calculate these product carbon footprints. And what you will win is, of course, insights into the emission hotspots when it comes to raw materials and packaging materials. Again, the specific logistics for these products, the production emissions, and as well the end of life, which is included here. When there is a product that produces emissions while being used, then of course you would include that too. If you go to the next one, and you therefore then identify the emission hotspots, and very often they're big surprises. So for example, this is from a winery where the owner was quite surprised that it's rather the packaging, i.e. the glass bottle. Glass is a very emission heavy product, and the logistics, because a glass wine in a glass bottle is very heavy. So there was a lot of surprise there to see that the emission hotspots aren't really where they maybe thought they were. And if we go to the next slide, you see a fine example for how it makes sense to start comparing as well. So as an e-commerce company, you will have multiple suppliers for very similar products. And once you've started to do these product carbon footprints on similar products with your suppliers, you will also see where are the suppliers that maybe have more sustainable and more responsible processes and materials that they're using. So you can start comparing, and that is especially possible if you do the product carbon footprint with the same methodology and potentially with the same provider, because then you ensure that you have all the right product life cycle phases there to do that comparison. And if you move to the next slide, you can then also decide which supplier to maybe focus on working how to reduce the emissions from the product. And this is an example again here from the from wine bottles, from the wine area. You can change, for example, the amount of material that is required by product design. These new eco bottles, they simply have thinner walls. They're lighter, they need less glass, plus they increase the amount of recycling glass that is used in that. And thus, the product carbon footprint for the final wine product is less, and the logistics as well. So that's where this cooperation comes in. If you have, if you are a larger company, plus 500 employees plus, you want to develop maybe science-based targets, and you have a large number of suppliers, then it is advisable to really have a more of a digital approach as well, where you start having surveys with your suppliers, you start evaluate your suppliers with regards to sustainability measures and the product carbon footprints, and you start gathering feedback, and you do that in a little bit more of a systematic approach. But that is only necessary if you really want to work with all your suppliers and get an input there. The most important item is really do targeted carbon footprints, product carbon footprints, and start comparing and start working on reduction measures. The next item then is, after working within departments and sites in your company and engaging your own company, after working with your suppliers on the product carbon footprint, one element that Leaders for Climate Action asked us to focus on is how to involve your customers, especially when it comes to carbon offset projects, and here with a focus on removal projects. What are removal projects? And carbon offset, you have three technologies normally: green energy, nature-based, and social impact. And so far, afforestation and blue carbon, like mangrove projects or agriculture projects, they are able to actually remove, not just reduce and avoid CO2 emissions, but actually remove them from the atmosphere. There is a nice metaphor. It's like a bathtub, and removing means I'm not just avoiding emissions from going into the bathtub, which would be avoiding and reducing projects, but I'm actually seeing that I can have annual sinks from the emissions that are already there in the atmosphere, and I'm withdrawing them that's just as a little insight what carbon removal is. Next slide shows that it is vital when you do work with an option for financing carbon removal projects. For example, via your customers or yourself, it's important to work with certified projects, for example, Gold Standard or the Verified Carbon Standards, because these projects are audited annually and they also support wider goals of the United Nations Sustainability goals. And how to engage customers. And I have here a few best practices from customers that I personally work with. You can engage them as well by a climate action contribution. Of course, it's always possible as well to offer carbon neutral products, for example, as a selection, but we're supposed to focus here a little bit more on the climate action contribution, and that is financial support for a carbon offset or removal project specifically here that is communicated in euros, but also with regards to how much CO2 via this financing will be removed from the atmosphere. You can, of course, integrate this into your checkout and say, okay, for this purchase here, we suggest, for example, a guideline could be 1% of the purchasing value. You could have that as part of your checkout, but of course that requires an integration. As a test phase, and that is a best practice to do, some companies use an additional product. So like a minimal viable product phase where they say, we just introduce an additional product and see and offer that for customers to pull into their shopping cart. And we have seen that there is a lot of positive feedback as well. And the nice thing about that is as well that you can test, you can see, is the amount the right amount? Where do I place the communication? Where do I position this during the shopping process? And you can also then gather feedback. So customers can give their rating, and some examples showed we had with some customers conversion rates of over 15% when this was, even when it was an opt-in, not an opt-out. And we had amounts testing as well, where, for example, we had a 1% value and as an additional product in the shopping cart, and people pulled in 2 or 3. So there were people who were quite happy to have a bigger support. And one of the reasons for that was also the full transparency. So transparency is key, in the communication. You need to say which project am I supporting? How does this project work? You can see that here on the right-hand side. And it's vital as a company to prove that this money that people have given you as part of the shopping process to invest in these carbon removal projects, that was actually done. And Climate Partner has an ID tracking, for example, after this carbon offset, where you as a company can prove how you have pushed this money into the right carbon offset project. It's communicatable via a link, and then customers can always also see the project details and how this works. So it is key when you involve customers to communicate very clearly how the carbon removal project works, how much carbon they will remove with the financial donation or with the financial investment that they're doing of maybe 1% of the value. And you need to prove as a company that you have forwarded this money to the project. And with that, I'm closing. There is a lot more to talk about, but that's always possible in a follow-up scenario. You can also visit our website to learn a little bit more about the services.
Thank you, Susanna, very much. That was very also informative and well-structured. Thank you very, very much. And it's nice that it fits well to what we discussed already before. Mm-hmm. Just perfect. And we are a little bit behind the timing, but I think it's definitely worth it. So we still have 2 more guests. Please meet Markus Dangelmeier from Packet X, where we can talk about the packaging solutions.
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks, Anna. My name is Markus Dangelmeier, one of the founders of Packet Eco. We're supporting companies with data, products, and services on their path to sustainability. And I'm here today to present you the 2nd and 3rd chapter, or give you a few insights from a practical perspective and also relating to the e-commerce guide. Optimize your packaging is the 2nd chapter, and potential adjusters we see for the e-commerce packaging optimizations are on one side on reduce, on reduction, and on the other side on adaption. Where do we see on the reduce side? Biggest part is definitely volume space, especially as trucks for parcel distribution are normally loaded or fully due to the space and not to weight. So every space reduction any packaging can bring more or less already relates an additional space for another one. Packaging variety is a wide space, but we want to bring it up as, for example, the packaging with a flexible inside could reduce filling material, could reduce space, could reduce logistics handling in a company, also reducing stock needed for different varieties. This very much depends on the product itself, but it's definitely one part to consider. Weight has definitely a huge influence on fuel consumption. So reducing, for example, the thickness from a so-called B flute for corrugated cardboard to an E flute reduces the weight for each parcel, reduces and sums up a lot if you're shipping whole pallets or even full truckloads. Filling material, definitely another important topic. Is it needed at all? Which kind of filling material? Can it be reduced, relating back to the packaging variety? And do we need like full filling material or just partly of it? From adaptation side, we see material, also mentioned earlier in one of the presentations, change from new material to recycled material. There are much more providers now who provide materials and cardboard with recycled materials. Sourcing location, especially for cartons, cardboards, there are a lot of suppliers. Choose the next one, make the effort to check which ones are close to the location where goods are actually packaged, reduces the transportation cost, reduces emissions there. Packaging type, another part, especially in the last 3 to 5 years, a lot of different kinds of packaging came up for e-commerce, for smaller ones. This is a way to reduce also shipping costs. So for example, typical example in Germany, use a maxi brief, so it's a standardized bigger letter size instead of carton types. And to go for suppliers who actually providing sustainable solutions and sustainable offers. All this supports in our aim to reduce emissions, and everything actually from a green logistics perspective also reduce the costs, which then also have more supporters in a company. Areas of influence we see on a product protection side, definitely as the main thing, and customer experience as well as the frustration-free opening is very important for e-commerce companies receiving their goods from the customers. Operational handling, another part, and marketing as well. So why are we bringing this up? Often companies decide to have new packaging, and then the logistics department is requested to buy it, but it's actually an overall part, and cross-departmental approach is required here to achieve the best packaging for a company and achieve positive environmental impact. Next one, please. From influence factors, we just lined up a few ones, which I also mentioned in the e-commerce guide. Level of protection, as also mentioned earlier. Does the product, the item definitely need any protection, or can it be actually sold or sent out in the original packaging? What is the product size and weight? End of life approach, also mentioned by Climate Partner. What is the company strategy? Yeah? Will it be reused? Should it be compostable? Should it be recycled? What are the customer segments? So these are topics to be considered there. For operations handling, also, for example, bringing up the topic of return handling. Does every package need a return information? Can it be, for example, printed as a QR code and then downloaded just on demand? Avoiding also already additional paper, additional work, and additional weight at the end. Shipping mentioned, choosing and selecting the proper company and making sure the customer handling is in the best way related to the product. So all these factors kind of being the basis, and selecting the data, bringing it together, then the operational financial impact should be assessed. And the most important thing then, assess the environmental impact with a so-called life cycle assessment. So have a look at the whole life cycle from the beginning at end of life and see what are the environmental impacts. We definitely suggest doing prototyping, especially in the last years. There are a lot more opportunities and possibilities to create prototypes, quite simple in very low quantities. So this helps you to find the right packaging, do some testing, and actually here coming to pilot it, which is important to check each parts in a company where new packaging, sustainable packaging is used. We see generally for smaller companies 4 to 8 weeks, and for bigger ones 4 to 6 months. Sorry, 3 to 4 months. That's it, thanks. So if all these, next slide please. If all these sounds quite complex and you want to start immediately, we just lined up here a few samples where more or less you can start immediately and source much easier, starting from eco-friendly labels, a delivery note pocket on a sustainable basis, compostable if in any case required. Choose water-based ink colors, which also supports the recycling process. There are paper-based tapes based on potato starch and natural coating, which definitely have the same level of coating as the ones you probably used the last years. Eco-based filling material, I mentioned paper-based, different types are already on the market. Best is actually to avoid it completely or go for air cushions, which have compostable filling or compostable surroundings and also reduce any harmful ingredients there. Stretch foil still used very much. If it's required, go for bio-based ones, either on, for example, pine oil basis or recycled basis, and go there also first step. Next picture is this picture of sizable carton. It actually cannot be seen properly, so you have lines where you actually can get down and then put the carton in the right size, so you don't need any filling material and reduce the amount of different packaging there. And here the sample of E versus B flute, just to have a picture on what I mentioned earlier. So the part of packaging is a very wide area. It's very specific on the product, but definitely meaningful, especially from a cost and environmental perspective, to take the time and check for the right one and get some help from outside if this cannot be done from the company inside. Thanks. Next one, please. Third chapter in the e-commerce guide is pilot reusable packaging, aiming here, avoiding the one-off usage, enlarge customer loyalty, which could also be a big reason and a big point here. Definitely reducing environmental impact, and biggest advantage here, apart from the environmental one, is reduce the costs in the long run, which are normally, depending on usage cycles, definitely quite fast being reached. Implementing a reusable packaging solution is much more complex. As mentioned just briefly, usage cycles is definitely the key factor. How often is it used? How potential is actually that it's kind of losing out of the chain and being used somewhere else, or just not brought back. Another point is multi-use system. Which system do you want to use? Do you take part in a pooling system? Do you buy something? Do you rent out to your customers? Same thing as multi-use types. So do you refill at your customers? Is there kind of an exchange service, which then also relates to the customer acceptance, relating to the usage cycles. Further parts are transport distances for the calculation, very important. Yeah, how long has the multi-use package to be delivered? Are there any returning points? And modularity, like stackable or foldable, also has a huge influence in space being needed, where we come back to what mentioned earlier, truck space, truck volume. Safety and hygiene also definitely to be considered. How easy is it to be cleaned? How easy is it to be repaired? What are the legal requirements to bring this into action? Next one, please. So here also just lined up a few potential steps. As mentioned, check realistic reuse circles, check the customer willingness with pilots, take the time, calculate emissions for the one-off, the multi-use, including all lifetime circle steps. And here also important, cleaning at the end, warehouse spaces, additional people required, like these operational influences. And all best reusable packaging has an end of life. So there, please consider, can it be recycled at the end? Is there a possibility to bring it back to a proper life cycle? And if this takes time, it definitely does. There might be an intermediate step like reusage, so at least that any packaging or can be used at least twice or 3 times. For example, talk to your suppliers. their packaging they are sending to you for bringing their goods into your warehouse can be reused from your side. So this is already a kind of a first step of a multi-use approach. And start with suppliers for multi-use packaging, because there you have a much more consistent relationship, much more consistent logistics ways. That's probably a good start for a company to step into multi-use packaging. And the next last slide, kind of giving some thoughts and ideas. Biggest issue for reusable packaging is the returning part. So probably also first thoughts for Mastermind classes. Should shipping providers provide return points? Could it be that shipping providers implement system-wide solutions, and potentially for us as an LFCA community is a possibility to enforce this, because the bigger the amount of people, customers and companies using any reusable packaging, the more such a system is viable and efficient for everyone. Thanks a lot. That was it from my side. Happy to share any more ideas and information anytime later. Feel free to contact us.
Thank you, Marcus, very much, especially for taking the challenge to pack such a wide topic as different approaches to packaging in just 10 minutes slot. Thank you very, very much. Please, like the call to action for guests, please ask questions in the chat just in a few minutes. So we will go to Q&A session where you can where we can, yeah, sorry, something happened with the screen sharing, but all good. So please ask questions in the chat, and then we will discuss it, but we will also have an opportunity to discuss this with video and like in personal approach. And now over to Philip from Elaboratum, please.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks very much. Yeah, being the last speaker is always quite a challenge. But I'd like to thank you, all of you, for staying with us, because we now come to a very special topic, at least for me as a very regular but also very conscious online shopper. We're talking about the dark side of e-commerce, about return rates. And the big question is, there are lots of approaches to lower return rates, and I'd like to present you a novel approach here, which deals with behavioral design. So while all of you probably know what return rates are, some may ask you the question, what is behavior design? What does it mean exactly? So I'd like to introduce you to that topic using a very simple yet well-known example from an historical experiment. And I would assume that the context of it is well known by exactly 50.0% by you. How do I know that? We're talking about men's toilets. So if your mission would be to reduce spillage at that kind of places or to reduce the cleaning costs, I would recommend you not to set up prohibition signs, not to install like a toilet police standing beside you, but to simply stick a sticker of a small fly in that space. So you see that there are no limitations, there are no restrictions. Men can still do whatever they want, wherever they want, but nevertheless, you would get a great impact. And that is the context we're talking about. That is the beautiful idea of behavioral design. We have a very small change in the decision context, which leads to a very major change in the behavior. That's the beautiful idea we want to talk about today. But before we come to the return topic, let me quickly introduce ourselves. We come from the behavioral design unit of Elaboratum, which is a digital consultancy. And our mission is to take all that research out there, because there's lots of research on the topic of psychology, user behavior, and behavioral economics, and to bring it loss-free into your digital interfaces to create interfaces which are really nice to use and which are highly efficient. So let's now get to the topic of e-commerce returns and start with a very quick status quo of where we stand in that topic. I focus on Germany here, but the facts are pretty similar for the rest of Europe. So first of all, we have to admit that the facts are shocking. We have more than 300 million return packages per year only in Germany, which leads to more than 200,000 tons of CO2 equivalents emitted. And Well, we just heard from Susanne that the outbound logistics make out more than 90% of the emissions in e-commerce. And I know that everybody of you is working on the topic of returns, but nevertheless, the level of the return rate is quite stable for years on a very high level. So quite obvious, we need novel approaches to lower that return rate and to help environment in e-commerce. And that is what we tried so far. What I bring you today is a sneak preview into the results of an experiment which we conducted. It's the largest return experiment so far, and we confronted more than 100,000 real online shoppers in real buying situations with different behavioral design interventions. So we showed them different stimuli, different nudges, so to say, just to see which of them worked well, which of these did its job, and how important was how big was the effect. And to start with that, with the result first, we show that we prevented 4 to 5% of all returns. This doesn't sound a lot, but we're talking about a saving potential of more than 50 million parcels per year, or approximately 30,000 tons of CO2 every year only in Germany. So let's have a closer look on what we did in this experiment. On the left-hand side, you find one of these standard ecological messages, which probably most of the e-commerce company display. For example, when the shopping system detects that somebody is putting that t-shirt, for example, here in 2 different sizes in the basket. So you have this bio cotton shirt here, and the user is putting it in size S and in size M in the shopping basket. And then you get these messages, and the standard messages says, hey, do you really want to order twice because it's not good for the environment? So think about that. Together we can save the climate. Thanks for your support. And on the right-hand side, we have 2 of these nudges of these behavioral design interventions, which we used, and you will find more in the e-commerce guide you find in your mailbox. So up there we have the social norms effect, and that means that we refer to other customers, and we say like many customers, they immediately find the right size using our sizing guide. So you should consider using that too, save returns and help the environment. And below we have a loss aversion stimulus, which emphasizes on the amount of time, of lifetime, which you would lose when you make an obsolete return. And by the way, the effect is quite high. So we're talking about 32 minutes on average, which is the lifetime loss, so to say, due to a return. So how do these variants work? And now the results come from different experiments, and we replicated everything. Everything you see here is statistically highly significant. So first of all, the standard message. We assume that it lowers the return rate, of course, but interestingly, it does the exact opposite of what you wanted to achieve. It increases the return rate. And even worse, it also significantly drops the revenue by almost 7%. So 7%, is that a lot? Let's take a medium, small, average online shop, for example, with 10 million revenue per year. Then we are talking about a loss of 700,000 euro per year, just because you decided to display your users that kind of message. So standard message, not good to use. But how did the other interventions perform? Well, social norms and loss aversion, they did their job. They significantly reduced the return rate by 3.5, respectively 4.9%. And that is interesting, but perhaps it's even more interesting what happened to the revenue, because the revenue didn't drop what we expected, but it even got higher by 3%, respectively 2% in these stimuli. So that's really the interesting part of that experiment from our perspective, because we know from experience that a sustainability measure only works on a broad scale if it does not have a massive negative impact on your business. So when you can show here companies, e-commerce companies, you can lower the return rate and at the same time increase your revenue, this would be something which everybody would be wanting to do. So there we have quite an interesting lever to reduce the returns. Let's bring everything together, and I know time is short. So we have seen that behavioral design is highly effective when it comes to reducing returns, while the standard ecological message fails. But one important thing, the situational context is quite important, and we have seen that the effect is not the same in all studies. So we need to know the needs of the users. We need to understand these needs and then only be able to identify really effective triggers. Otherwise, the returns won't drop significantly. The big question is, how can we achieve this? And I won't go through this 6-step plan we prepared for you point by point, because you will find everything in the handout and time is short. But let me emphasize 2 points that are important to mention. First of all, I'd like to motivate everybody of you to get involved in the Mastermind groups, because it's really an amazing format to get feedback from your colleagues, to exchange opinions and to speed up your whole process. And second, please feel free whenever you have questions, you need sparring or support when it comes to lower return rates or understand customer behavior. Please feel free to ask us. We're really happy to help you out. And you noticed I increased speed a little bit to gain time and to have time for your questions. But if that wasn't enough for you, and if you're still interested, so make sure you have a closer look in the guide you have received via email, and stay tuned, because in about 2 weeks' time, we will publish the whole results of the whole study, with all results, all the insights of the return experiment in English and German language. And we're happy to give it to you as leaders for climate action for free. So thank you very much. And now I think, Anna, we can straight go in the discussion.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That's the best when science brings results that you can really see statistically proven and business oriented. That's like exactly what we like. Just maybe one more thing that I would like to add is about how our mastermind groups will work, and then we can go to more active communication. So first of all, mastermind group, it's not like our invention, it's a special methodology that focuses on this approach that everyone who joins the group work on your own. So you work on your own targets, working on the project in your company, but you come together with like-minded people who work on similar projects, and then you exchange, and group dynamic help you to solve the challenges that come on your way through brainstorming, through expert input, and so on. And we will make sure that whenever the group feels a little bit stuck and projects are not moving, we will invite experts or solutions or whatever can help you on this way. Then the cadence will be meeting every month, once, just 1 hour, so it's not a big time commitment from you. And also you're welcome to join not only as a project manager leading the project, but also you can invite your colleagues, for example, leads of logistics or someone from your product department and so on. So this is pretty flexible. And now we want to hear what you know, what you think, but of course we cannot talk to each of you. That's why we created this form. Please take a look in the chat, and we ask you to take now 1 minute to click through the form. It takes really just 1 minute, where you can see the list of projects that we just discussed. Plus, we have a special field for people who are more like solution providers, so that not brands who can implement this project, but someone who can support brands. So then please click here. And yeah, that's really interesting to see the results and to see which project looks the most popular right now. So please do this now, and I will share with you results. Okay, we have already 11 responses. "23 responses. And yeah, by the way, some of the people joining us today who joined through LinkedIn events or invited through our network partners, if we don't have your direct contact details, especially for you, please fill in the form and give us at least your email, but better phone, so that we could contact you and discuss how we could, yeah, drive action together. Nice, we have already 37. Let's maybe wait 20 more seconds and then I will share my screen. Okay, so People's Choice Award goes to motivating customers to take climate action. Those who have not submitted a response yet, please finish it, but I think we can see the trend already. So, and yeah, that's really nice to see that we have here both action through, like in your own like zone of control, mapping your full scope 3 emissions is also quite popular, but also sphere of influence, motivating your customers. That's exactly what I hoped to see. Thank you very, very much. And just very last thing is about our next steps. So today we are in this point on the kickoff meeting of the project. From now on, you have about 3 weeks to think about like which projects sound interesting to you. It's not like a public commitment. It's nothing that you have to do, but please choose the projects that sound interesting to you, better more than one. And submit a form that we will send you by email later with a bit more detailed questions that you have seen now. And then in October, mastermind groups start working and they will meet for 12 months. And in a year, we will see what results we could achieve in the first year. So that's the plan. And now let's start the discussion. So we have already several questions in the chat. Maybe one with which we could start, I would address to Jenny from bold.com about engaging your colleagues and from different departments. Do you have any tips on how to get people involved? Because Emma touched this ground a little bit, but maybe you have also some insights on that.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a company of about 2,200 colleagues now. So we did a survey about a year ago, and what we saw is that a lot of colleagues are willing to work on this topic. They're very motivated, but what you see is it's quite difficult to get it in everyone's targets. So not everyone has time for it, and but people are very willing. So what we do is we organize a lot of internal presentation. We use a lot of internal communication and what we're doing, and getting people excited, and see how it's part of their job, how they can make it part of their job. And at some point we also organize like an event where we show our colleagues what is their actual impact. So we know what how do you say that, a customer, how many items they buy over a year. So we kind of showed our colleagues, this is the impact if you look at your water use for all those products you buy or you sell. So make it very visible to them. What is the impact? What can they help prevent if they work on it? So making it very visible and just keep reminding people. And most people are very willing to work on this.
Thank you very much.